Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. The obvious big news. Kamala Harris was chosen to be Joe Biden's running mate, the first African-American woman to be nominated or chosen to be the running mate for a presidential candidate. History in the making. And look, the response that you see from people, rightfully jubilant. The fact that girls across this country now have the ability to go, look, I can do this too. I completely get it. This is history in the making. It really is. And the chance of having a female vice president, really extremely exciting. And to be honest, it was the safe choice. And as I was thinking about this today, I kept going back to this idea that, she was the safe choice. Now, understand, Biden had said from the beginning he was going to nominate a woman. That was part of it. And I think, conventional wisdom was it was going to have to be a woman of color. Because of what African-American women mean to the Democratic Party. This was the safe choice. And it's interesting that, in this moment, the black woman was the safe choice. I think that in and of itself is pretty remarkable to say where we are as a country. Now, the really amazing thing is it took Donald Trump all of, a couple of minutes to begin the attack on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, coming out with a little video calling her, I think it was phony Kamala, and him again with the sleepy Joe. And I got to tell you, it was, as I'm watching the video, I'm going, had he been this prepared to do his job, who knows, maybe 165,000 people wouldn't be dead. Maybe the country wouldn't be in major turmoil with a virus that maybe had he responded this quickly to, and with real vigor and real, get to it kind of mentality, maybe we wouldn't be here. Now, as we know, this was all about just happened in the blue states. Let them take the beating. He saw it through a political lens. Another reason why this moment he has to go. Now, of course, Trump came out during his little propaganda press conference and said that Harris would have been his number one draft pick, which means that he was probably most afraid of her. Because understand, his submissive wife, Mike Pence, my words, that is the words of an evangelical leader, is going to get just annihilated in a debate. So that's something to look forward to. It's not going to be good for the Trump campaign. But, as I'm watching this video, I'm going, phony and sleepy. Is that the best Trump can come up with? They're all socialists. They're all horrible. They're bad. It was just one of those moments where you go, is this the best that he can do? And, he understand, Joe Biden was not my first choice. In fact, Joe Biden was my fifth choice. Kamala Harris was probably my eighth choice. Right now, they're my number one choice. All of that stuff is over. And I've heard people say, well, that wasn't my first choice. No, it wasn't my first choice either. Right now, they're my first choice. Right now, the Biden-Harris ticket is my number one choice, and my number one hope and goal in the next couple of months is to get that ticket elected so that we can begin cleaning up the mess that has happened in this country, and also to elect a Democratic Senate, hold on to the House so we can actually move some really good, solid working class policies through the U.S. government, get some action done immediately, and begin to alleviate the pain, the suffering, the job loss, the uninsured, and some of the major problems that we have in this country. begin doing that immediately. So, we could go through, I wanted Bernie or I wanted Elizabeth or, even further down the list. That's over. That ain't happening. You got two choices right now. You've got the status quo. You've got constant chaos. You've got the kleptocracy. You've got inept government. You've got people who don't know, don't want to know, and don't care to know how to do their jobs. Or we can choose people who are going to be competent. We can bicker around the edges. We can fight over, is he progressive enough? Is he not? Is she liberal enough? Is she not? We can do that, and we can rip ourselves to shreds. And what will end up out of it is we will get 4 more years of chaos, of theft, of destruction, of degradation, of being humiliated on the international stage. And of course, let's not forget China dominating the world, which was a weird moment today because Donald Trump actually said, and it's one of these things where you just kind of go, what? According to our president, that if Joe Biden is elected, we're going to all have to learn Chinese. I guess he believes that if Joe Biden's elected, the Chinese are going to own the country, and we're going to all have to learn Chinese. Now, understand, I already believe that China owns a good portion of the country. They own a good portion of our debt. We've done a lot of really dumb things over the last 20, 25 years. It's going to take a lot of work to undo the damage that's already been done. And look, Trump has just made it worse, not better. He has made it worse, not better. And what's going to happen is we're going to have to figure out, as an international community, how to rein China in. This is not a go-it-alone strategy, of which Trump has been terrible. And I know we're going to hear an awful lot about, Beau Biden had all these contacts in China. Well, guess what? All of the Trump kids do too. And don't forget the wonderful Trump ties and the Trump shirts and all of the things that he was hawking in his stores. Those were made in China too. So never forget that. I've asked people, send me something that Donald Trump has slapped his name on that's made in the U.S. And there isn't much. The official campaign hats, maybe. But the official bobblehead dolls, not so much. The T-shirts, absolutely not. Now this is the same Donald Trump who said Joe Biden was against God and was going to hurt God. So clearly grasping at straws. And at today's propaganda press conference, he went on this long rambling. He was asked about what he thought of Harris, and extraordinarily nasty. So we're going to get back to the nasty woman thing. The most liberal. Evidently, she's the most liberal in the Senate. You knew that was coming. She's going to raise taxes. She's going to slash the military. In fact, she is going to slash the military like nobody's ever seen. Nobody can believe how much she's going to slash the military. And she evidently hates petroleum products. So, going to raise taxes, hates the military, and hates petroleum products. Doesn't like plastic. Evidently, that's a thing with her. Maybe she's allergic. I don't know. She hates fracking. I guess that too, according to Donald Trump. And she wants socialized medicine. That's all of that. So again, what we're seeing is he basically today laid out what the campaign is going to be. It's going to be the same kind of tropes that we've heard in the past, that the Democrats are the most liberal ever. I always loved hearing, but Barack Obama was by far the most liberal president ever. And I go, no, if I'm comparing presidents, I'm going to take Eisenhower or Nixon as more liberal than Obama was. Obama was liberal compared to, Newt Gingrich and, a lot of the craziness we've got now. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting to see what their attack lines are, and they never change because they really do think we're stupid. They really do think that we don't get what the ploy is. And for some, it works. For some, all you have to do is throw the giant S word out there, socialism, and they'll lose their ever-loving freaking minds. When the reality is most of us who are called socialist want to return to a time where, we didn't have gazillionaires. where we didn't have owners, where we didn't have giant monopoly companies, where we weren't owned by a political system that is dependent on so much money going into it. And this is one of the things that I'm hoping Joe Biden actually begins to accomplish, because he is someone who claims to want to get money out of politics. I'm hoping Joe Biden, with all of the digging and all of the cleaning up, does some of that. Now, will that happen immediately? Well, no, of course not. But as I've said, I think Joe Biden is a good, decent guy. I think Harris was the safe pick. I can say who I wanted it to be, and we can bat that around, and we can argue whether it was a good choice or a bad choice, and who my number one choice was going to be. We could do all of that. It's wasted time. Right now, it is Biden and Harris. That's the ticket. Right now, that's my number one choice. Right now, that is where we need to be focusing our attention, because at the end of the day, as I said right from the start, the clear and present danger is the guy who is in the White House right now. And don't fall for the childhood little schoolyard, phony Kamala and Sleepy Joe. Don't fall for that. It's just nonsense. Because truth be told, Donald Trump doesn't have a good record to run on. That perfectly clear. They've had one real legislative win, and that was giving away a boatload of money to the very wealthy. That's it. That's all they got. 2 years they had steamroller control, and that's all they got through. Now, what Trump's done with his executive order pen is a whole nother story. We have destroyed regulation. And I know my conservative friends love to tell me, but Rick, those are job-killing regulations. You should be against them. And I say, well, I'm against bad regulations. Sure, we can discuss if it's a good or a bad regulation. But I'm more against the people-killing lack of regulation. I'm more against the people-killing lack of protection on the job and in our environment and in our society. And that, to me, is the biggest focus. And Trump has been extraordinarily dangerous to workers, consumers, citizens. So for me, come November, there's one choice. And like I said, we can argue all day long after November 3rd. After the election, we can argue whether Harris was the best choice or not. Right now, she's the number one choice. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Let me know how you think this is going to play out. Is she going to bring the magic? As my one friend said, she's got the black girl magic. Is she going to bring the magic and energize the base? Or is she going to fire up the right wing and bring out their base? We'll see how this plays out. Love to hear your thoughts. rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union was founded, after the victorious strike of 1934 that established the Union Hiring Hall. West Coast Union leaders embarked on an inland campaign to organize the thousands of warehouse workers who handled shipped goods. But West Coast dock workers overwhelmingly chose to join the CIO after it was expelled from the AFL earlier that year. They found that the ILA planned to abandon the warehouse workers they had worked so hard to organize. They also opposed dues assessments to fight the CIO and disagreed with the ILA's hostility to minimum wage laws, Social Security, and unemployment insurance. Radicals like Harry Bridges and others had established themselves not only as workers' leaders, but also led attacks on Jim Crow racism in the ranks and in the industry. The success of the 1934 strike was due due in part to the welcoming of blacks into the ranks of the Union. In his book, Workers on the Waterfront, historian Bruce Nelson notes that, quote, the ILWU's well-known opposition to racial discrimination was an important factor in the Union's expansion into Hawaii, not only on the waterfront, but among sugar and pineapple plantation workers. The triumph of the ILWU in Hawaiian agriculture brought about a degree of fraternization across racial lines that few had thought possible. Since then, the Union has beat back numerous Taft-Hartley and McCarthy-era attacks. More recently, the ILWU has been in the forefront of broader social justice struggles, leading walkouts and work stoppages for various political causes. Today, it represents close to 60,000 workers, including those locals that initially refused to affiliate. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's reported this week that by the New York Times that the Trump administration is planning, as we've been saying here on the program, anything that Obama did during his term, Trump seems to feel he needs to undo. Good, bad, and different. In fact, a lot of the stuff Obama did was really good stuff. Now you've got Donald Trump, who has obviously the Obama fetish, and anything that he has his name on has to go. And evidently the Times is reporting that the methane standards that Obama put into place to help protect us from this deadly greenhouse gas, Trump wants to completely undo. And you go, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that, not more than a mile from my house where they put the giant pipeline in, that means when the methane escapes from the pipeline, no one's going to know about it. There's going to be no regulation to protect the people who live along that track of pipeline or any of the pipelines. Do you think that's good for us? I certainly don't. Here to share some thoughts on just how bad this guy has been for the environment. I've asked Marshall Herskovitz to come talk with us. He's an American film director, writer, producer, and he is the president emeritus of the Producers Guild of America. Marshall, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Great to talk to you.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I mean, I saw this story and, immediately my mind goes to, here's another one of those moments of a people harming, people killing, a repeal of what was a smart protection, a smart regulation. Here you got a guy just trashing that.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I have to tell you, I look at Trump and the guys around him, and I say, these are people who don't believe there's going to be a future. They don't care. In other words, methane is 80 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. It's so bad. And by the way, it's leaking in the trillions of tons from the permafrost, above the Arctic Circle all around the world right now. And it'll kill us much faster than carbon dioxide will. And here he goes just saying, fine, let it just go out. Why not? Because my buddies are going to make money if I do it. They're just trying to get as much as they can, as fast as they can before it all falls apart.
Yeah, but when I talked about this originally, Marshall, I got response, well, that's just cows farting. How are we going to regulate cows farting? Because we've boiled it down to the most simplistic, the lowest common denominator. So some of my knuckle dragging mouth breather friends can regurgitate something, and this is what they come up with: cows farting.
And by the way, there are a lot of farmers making money right now from taking that methane and turning it into biofuel and selling it. So even cow farts can be dealt with if we do it right.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. This comes back to that sense that there are regulations that are much needed. And this is one of those that, once I read more into it and I'm going, that pipeline that's just down the road, here's how it affects me. If there's a leak of methane in that pipeline, now I have, at this moment, we might be able to find out. If he scraps this regulation, none of us get to know about it.
Of course. I mean, I think the idea that came from the Reagan era, that regulations were all bad, it has just been really poisonous for our culture, frankly. I mean, I like to look back at the economy. We were talking about this in the 1960s. And how well our economy worked in the 1960s when we had high regulation, high taxes, and still incredible growth, an incredible middle class. the idea that regulations are bad across the board is ridiculous. Yes, some are bad, but I think this notion that we have deregulation, what it's really caused is sort of oligarchy. It's caused this consolidation of industries and corporations so that they could lessen competition. That's not capitalism. I mean, by the way, I have lots of libertarian and conservative friends who are just as angry about this stuff as I am, who say that what we have now is a perversion of capitalism. And if we had real capitalism, then a lot more people would benefit from it.
But isn't that the conversation we should really be having? Not whether one little regulation is good or bad, but the whole system seems perverted, and we've got a president right now and a political party hell bent on, as you've said, grabbing as much as they can. I said on Inauguration Day that we were going to see this administration as the most kleptocratic in history, and they have not failed me.
No, they have not. There was a concept, in the past that seems to be forgotten now. When you look at these anti-mask people and anti-vaccine people, something called public good that, we believed in World War II, for instance, in our country, that when something is bad for everyone works together to fight that thing that's bad for everyone, instead of people saying, well, no, this is a free country and I can do what I want and you don't tell me what to do. Can you imagine during World War II if people said, you know what, I'm gonna keep my lights on and I'm not gonna ration my food and I'm not gonna do the rubber drives like everyone else. The only way we won that war is that everybody worked together.
Right, but we were a different society. I think back to my grandparents. Half the stuff that goes on today. My grandfather always had a saying. Sometimes you need to slap somebody upside the back of the head to make a citizen out of them. Because they were a much more direct, much more violent society. If you didn't fall into line, if you didn't do what everybody else was doing, they brought you into line. There was none of this, hey, I've got my rights and kicking and screaming. So to answer your question, it would have been a much more violent time because my grandfather would have never put up with nonsense like that.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and why has that change happened? I think you can look to the left and the right. That's a much longer conversation. You look at the 1960s when a lot of the sort of discipline and harshness sort of fell away because people said American society was too harsh and that you should treat kids more nicely and you should listen to them when they cry. Some of that was really great and some of that may have gone too far, So I think what I'd love to see is for the conversation in this country to include people who have a conservative viewpoint and people who have a liberal viewpoint and speak together in a manner that we can figure out our problems together. But that is a pipe dream at the moment.
And do you ever see that coming around? I mean, because you would think that this mask and this virus, because I've always said, the country pulls together in times of crisis. In my lifetime, 9/11 was, the catastrophic event of the moment. And I supported George Bush at that moment. Didn't vote for him, thought he was going to be a terrible president, had horrible thoughts. But in the moment of 9/11, I'm like, man, I want you to succeed. I want you to do the right thing. And I got behind him, quickly lost my support. But, there was that moment where we were all listening to each other. And sadly, it didn't last long.
Yes, it didn't last long. And, look, I think you see this all the time, this sort of both sidism going on in the mainstream media. I think you have to look at what the Republicans did going back to the 1990s, Newt Gingrich and the whole bunch of people, and basically the Republican Party became radicalized at that time and was not the Republican Party of the past. And, so it's not like, oh, the Democrats did it and the Republicans did it. No, the Republicans did it. Now, the Democrats may have responded in ways that were inappropriate. That's possible. But you're not going to see among Democrats the stuff that's become the norm among Republicans right now. And by the way, I have lots of Republican friends. I'm not talking about Republican citizens. I'm talking about Republican lawmakers. I'm talking about people who try to suppress the vote. People who try to purge voters or pull stunts in Congress that don't allow the kind of deliberative type of lawmaking that we used to have. As soon as you had Grover Norquist say the government should be so small that you could strangle it in a bathtub, we were in trouble, because that's not the country that was Eisenhower's country, or as you say, even Nixon's country. That was just not the way we looked at having a government before.
Yeah, but here's the reality, and I think I used this quote yesterday, and I'm sure you've seen it. Dwight Eisenhower wrote a letter to his brother Edgar saying, there are a couple of Texas oil billionaires who want to do away with labor law and unemployment insurance and farm bills and all this, Social Security. Their numbers are negligible and they're stupid. As my punchline goes, the sad reality is the country right now is being run by stupid people who want to destroy Social Security. They want to destroy labor laws. They want to destroy all of the progress of the New Deal and take us back to the good old days of pay or die health insurance and desperation workplaces like the Lochner era.
Yep, that's right. That's their idea of freedom. And, it goes way back. I mean, those people who think all this started with Trump don't know their history. Look, Barry Goldwater in 1964, the John Birch Society, going back to the 1930s, the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, we've had 25 or 30% of America being on that fringe going way, way back. The problem is, or in the past, they didn't have a voice the way they have now. They didn't have Fox News. They didn't have Breitbart. They didn't have the Sinclair stations. They didn't have this coordinated messaging apparatus, this multi-billion-dollar messaging apparatus, talk radio that has sort of taken over the whole country. I mean, they have much more voice than people on the left do now.
Something I've been saying for the last 15 years that we've been doing this program here, and is part of the reason that we started doing this, because of the fact that there is nothing like what I do out there for people to consume. That's why we get such a good response, because I think people want to have and be that country that we talk about. We want a government that's functional. Size to me doesn't matter. Big, small, I don't care. I want it effective. I want in a moment of crisis, like a coronavirus, that we have a government that responds and helps protect people. In a moment of crisis, when we have mass unemployment, I want them to come and step forward and help the unemployed, make sure people don't lose their homes, kids don't go hungry, people don't go uninsured. There's so much I want our government to be able to do, and yet people who have told us they don't believe in government are the people who are in charge right now.
I know. You know what I think? I think this works at a personal level and at a national level. I'm sure we both know people who see themselves as victims in life, who see themselves as not having enough, who are angry. And someone whose orientation is that way is never really going to get what they want in their life. And I think as a nation, too many people have come to see America as having limits. It can't do this, it can't do that, we can't help people who are down. It's a zero-sum game to too many people. That's what Trump's friends are like in some way. And I think going back to World War II, one of the things that was amazing about this country then was this sense that there was plenty, that there was abundance, that we could make any future we wanted to make because we had so much to work with. And if you don't have that perception of America, then you're going to see it as a zero-sum game. You're going to see winners and losers. And I think that's what's happened, is that people who with that negative viewpoint have taken over.
So does Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, do they have the ability to maybe turn that around? I mean, we're, as I've said on this program a bunch of times, this virus, this crisis gives us some opportunities to maybe rethink the direction in the future, maybe rethink how we handle the next crisis. Maybe start talking about how we undo some of the damage. Do you see Biden and Harris as a way forward?
I do. Honestly, I think Biden has been underestimated all along. I think, first of all, Biden was much more progressive than Obama when he was his vice president. I think Biden, people tend to see his difficulty in speaking and not understand that that's mostly because he's been a stutterer his whole life. He's not losing it at all. He actually has a very agile mind, and he's been shifting recently as he sees the political sort of territory shift. He's been shifting, and he realizes that he has to go bigger than he was saying before. I don't think that's something he planned to do 6 months ago. I think he's seeing what's happening right now
Right.
and saying, oh, this is a moment of opportunity where we can get a lot done in America because we've got to make changes no matter what. So let's make great changes. And I give him an enormous amount of credit for that. And look, I think Kamala Harris is someone who is, she's far from the most liberal person in the Senate. I think she's a little bit of a chameleon, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. But I think she will fit herself very easily to Biden's game plan, which is let's have a very, very ambitious agenda, but let's get it done. I mean, that's the thing about Biden. Having been in the Senate all those years, if you can spend the rest of your life saying, oh, what a utopia America could be if we only did this and this and this. But if you can't get it done, then where are you? Do you know what I mean? So I think that's Biden. Biden says, here's the vision. Now, here's the pragmatism. Let's put them together. And I think Harris can help with that.
I sure hope so, because I've been saying the same thing. FDR didn't run on the New Deal and the idea that he was going to transform the country. He was an opportunistic guy. It was there. That's what moved him. And ultimately, maybe you'll agree with me. It's going to come back to us. One of the knocks that I give against us in 2009 is we elected Barack Obama, the first African-American president. We patted ourselves all on the back. Hey, we did something great. And we went home and back to our lives and back to whatever was on a different channel. And that was it. Nobody stayed engaged. We didn't push for the changes we wanted. And we ultimately didn't get the things that I think we needed.
That's right. And we lost too many state and local elections. We lost 1,000 elections in the next 8 years across the country. And in some states, there was no Democratic organization at all. So we've had a long way to come back from. And I think we're in a good position right now, but that's assuming that we're going to have a fair election.
So let me finish up with that, because, that's been a big concern of mine. That, I look at 2000, 2000 was an interesting election year with voting while black and the hanging chads. 2004 was an interesting election cycle with the caging that went on. 2008, they couldn't steal. But then you got 12 with the voter ID, 16 with a lot of the shenanigans there. Now you've got the cross-check stuff going on. And now with the Postal Service, are you as worried about shenanigans as I am?
I'm worried to death about it. I honestly am. At every level, hacking, suppression, purging, the post office. It's like, it keeps me up at night, frankly, because they're doing it out in the open. In other words, it's not like they're trying to hide it. It's right there. And, you have a Department of Justice that you cannot trust in this regard. So who's going to protect us? I mean, when I saw the news report the other day that China wants Biden to win, that's the first thing that gave me maybe a little bit of hope, because I thought, oh, well, that will give Mitch McConnell a reason to finally pass that goddamn election security bill that's been sitting on his desk for 5 months.
Right.
Because maybe it will impact him as well. This is an incredibly dangerous moment for democracy. We all know that. And it's a real danger. It's not a made-up danger.
No, I'm right there with you. But when I saw the China thing, immediately the Trump response is, we're all going to be speaking Chinese, Marshall. We're all going to have to learn Chinese because they own the country. Yes. And here again, I don't disagree with that already. I think China owns way too much of the country and has too much influence. But I don't know that we're going to be speaking Chinese anytime soon. But Marshall, I appreciate the time. It was great talking with you. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts with us.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Good stuff. Marshall Herskovits, like I said, he is an American film director, writer, producer, but more importantly, the president emeritus of the Producer Guild of America. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the day that federal troops pushed Kelly's Industrial Army out of Washington, D.C. and across the Potomac River. The Army was a group of unemployed men who had come to the nation's capital to protest government inaction. The country was in the grip of an economic depression. The nation's agricultural regions in the South and Great Plains were also hit by a drought. Times were hard for American workers and families. The call had gone out across the nation for the unemployed to make their way to the doorstep of Congress. The goal was to petition for public infrastructure projects to put people back to work. Businessman Jacob Coxey had organized a March of the Unemployed from Ohio. Charles T. Kelly and his group came from California. They rode the rails and made it to Des Moines, Iowa, where they encamped. After a while, the local residents decided the unemployed group had outstayed their welcome. The Iowans provided lumber so the Industrial Army could build flatboats and be on their way. By the time Charles Kelly and his men made it to D.C., Coxey had already been sentenced to 20 days in jail for trespassing on the Capitol lawn. Yet unemployed men from across the country kept coming into the nation's capital. 1,200 men arrived from different points across the country. One of those in Kelly's group was a young author by the name of Jack London. London wrote of his experience, quote, "Across the wild and woolly West, clear from California, General Kelly and his heroes captured trains. But they fell down when they crossed the Missouri and went up against the effete East. The marchers' protests earned no help from Congress." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a listener sent me an email with Steny Hoyer's calendar on it. Evidently, there are going to be no more votes until September 14th. If I'm reading this right, September 14th, that's an entire month away before there's another vote. And I guess there's only going to be 13 voting days until Election Day. I got to tell you, if it were me, I know it's an election year. I know people need to get home. I know it's summer. I get it. I know. Yes. I get every other excuse as well. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We're in the middle of a time when millions of people have lost their jobs. Millions of people are uninsured, and millions of people are about to lose the place where they live. You would think that you would stay and just cast votes, maybe repass the HEROES Act, maybe other things, put stuff on Mitch McConnell's desk to say, hey, Mitch, do something. I'm sorry, but throwing my hands up and going, we tried, and then going home doesn't fly for me. And here to share some thoughts on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, I've asked our good friend Jeff Hauser to come talk with us. Jeff is the executive director of the Revolving Door Project. Their website, therevolvingdoorproject.org. They're at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. Jeff, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime, Rick.
So am I alone in this assessment that it's a bad idea to go home? Shouldn't they be there doing their job, or at least appearing to do their job?
Members of Congress have two jobs. They have the job of knowing what's going on in their district, and they have the job of taking what they know in their district and applying it in the nation's capital, in our legislature, be it passing bills or performing oversight on Congress. And right now, I think it's very clear what each district needs. They need a stimulus bill. They need to fix the tremendous holes in our economy, the labor market suffering, the lack of resources for our postal service, our public health system, our schools, our state and local governments. They need action. And yes, it is definitely the case that Mitch McConnell is the biggest problem right now in American politics. But to my mind, the job of the House is not just to say, well, it's not our fault, it's Mitch's fault, in a way that insiders pick up on. It's their job to do politics that creates pressure on Mitch McConnell to do better, and on Donald Trump for that matter. And right now, taking your ball and going home does nothing to that end. You're just not going to create pressure on Mitch McConnell spread out and absenting the National Party from the dialogue. I mean, right now, the congressional Democrats have no sustained message in the national media. They are not successfully blaming Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump for the failure of Congress to address the massive needs in our economy and in our public health system. They're not doing their job of creating political pressure. It is not just the job of the media. It's not just the job of activists. It is the job of the leadership of the Democratic Party to put pressure on the Republican Party.
Absolutely. And the thing that gets me is they let Donald Trump issue 4 executive orders that I'm still not sure how are all going to work out or where the money's going to come from or any of that. But they let him, put that forth, and they went, "Oh, okay, it's done," and left. I'm kind of dumbfounded at this.
It's so weird. They just constantly believe that the tools of politics cannot possibly succeed. I call it learned helplessness. They just think, well, they've tried in the past and it didn't work, so ergo we shouldn't try again. And if Speaker Pelosi doesn't have power, what power do the rest of us have? None of us are in line of succession to the presidency. None of us run half of a co-equal branch of government. I mean, we were all told before the 2018 elections that if we took back the House, we would have a check on President Trump. And that has not proven to be true. And that is demobilizing. You don't increase activism by telling people, hey, elect us to this, we can do a lot for you, and then giving up. Like, I just don't understand the passivity of the Democratic leadership. President Trump's executive orders are this weird blend of fakery, pretend nothingness with a little dollop of illegality. And this is the kind of thing where you can actually split the Republican Party in half. There are some Republicans who, like Ben Sasse from Nebraska, who are actually being critical of the unconstitutional parts of Trump's work. And then you have the real reality that what Trump's doing is hardly as significant as what he is claiming he is doing. And you would think you'd want to be in Washington holding hearings to make those points, that Trump is combining illegality with ineffectuality. That is something that a opposition party should be hammering Trump on. You don't go home. You cannot hammer Trump at home with 400, with the Democrats, 230 Democrats in the House, each having their own disparate message in different local governments. That's not going to add up to a national message. The way to have a national message is to do your work in the nation's capital.
That's where they belong. I look at the big messaging part for me has been this end of the payroll tax, I shouldn't say the end, the suspension, the holiday. You're still going to pay it back potentially because Mnuchin and Trump have already threatened that if he's not reelected, you're going to have to pay it back. To me, this is that moment where you go, this is them wanting to destroy Social Security. This is them moving in that direction to destroy Social Security. And you're ultimately not getting a benefit from it and destroying Social Security. This seems to me to be the place where Democrats would want to fight the hardest because Republicans have been wanting to destroy Social Security for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a weird policy, which makes sense because the Republican Party has given up pretending to try to devise policy that might address the problems of Americans. But it is some version of either a complicated fakery or the end of Social Security. And honestly, it's probably a little bit of both. It's not going to really do much to put needed money in people's pockets, especially the pockets of people who need it, which are obviously much more the unemployed or underemployed rather than the people who are paying significant payroll taxes because they are currently receiving significant payroll. But you're starting to set a precedent that payroll taxes are optional, and that's what funds Social Security and Medicare. And that's deeply disturbing because millions and tens of millions of Americans rely on Medicare and Social Security, as well they should. This has been a bedrock of American society, be it Social Security since FDR or Medicare since LBJ. These are things that people of all political parties, all walks of life depend on. And Democrats should be fighting super hard on this issue. And there were some decent tweets But a tweet is not a communication strategy. It's not an electoral strategy. If President Trump wants to endanger Social Security and Medicare, he needs to be made to pay for that so that we set a lesson, a legacy, a precedent that if you attack Social Security or Medicare, you will suffer politically.
That's how it used to be. But immediately, Jeff, I got, conservatives telling me, well, Barack Obama did it. Barack Obama cut payroll taxes, and I didn't hear you screaming about that. To which I had to remind them that, Barack Obama paid for it. They actually allocated resources to the fund to make up the difference. They were just trying to get people money in their pockets quicker than going through here's a check process. So, to me, there's a huge difference between the two.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest is, as you said, that there was an appropriation of money by Congress signed by President Obama to make up for the deficiency in Social Security and Medicare trust funds as a result of the reduction in payroll tax. That's what we did in 2009 in first term Obama. And the second thing is we were dealing with a very different type of economic calamity. I mean, both situations are bad. The current situation is actually even worse, but they're fundamentally different. In 2009, you had an economic collapse because bankers screwed up the entire economy. That is a very different thing than a public health situation like we have now, which is restricting people's economic behavior because we want them to be doing less economic activities. We don't want the sort of travel, indoor restaurant dining. There's a whole swath of activity that we are actively discouraging because it's bad for public health, and the responses should be different. So it is both a different response that Trump is doing than the one that Obama did, and it's also bad policy because we don't need the same type of stimulus. What we really need now is a government to offset reductions in income that people are experiencing because we as a society are responding to a public health crisis. That is just different than a situation in which banks can't lend money because the banks can't do basic accounting and they've undermined the economy. It's just a different economic challenge in 2020 than in 2009.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, and I've said this before on the program, that I want people to stay home. We should be making people whole to stay home so they can continue to pay their rent, continue to pay for food, and keep the lights on, and do all of those things that you would do if you were working. But stay home. And if we were to really lock down for maybe a good month, maybe we could whip this thing. But doing this stuff piecemeal and a little bit here and a little bit there, all we're doing is prolonging the pain and prolonging the economic collapse and really just draining our ability to respond to the next crisis and the next crisis.
Yeah, I mean, there's an understandable fatigue, particularly in people who did a good job of complying with public health mandates for the last several months. You get to a point where you're like, I really miss basic human interactions that kids' sports, going to the movies, going to restaurants, going to the gym, getting your hair cut. I mean, it's understandable that people are a little stir crazy. Don't get me wrong, I get that. But the problem is that in countries that took it very, very seriously and had extremely high compliance, they not only flattened the curve, they significantly suppressed the volume of virus. And then they can return more quickly. I mean, there is no greater contrast. There is no better symbol of America's failure than the fact that European soccer and European sports are returning. And America, we're not going to have, a college football season in at a minimum large swaths of the country. We'll see if it happens anywhere, but we're going to miss a chunk of college football and quite possibly the NFL because we're not capable of taking public health guidelines seriously. The people who don't take public health guidelines seriously make it much more difficult for everyone else. But the only thing I will also add to that is it would be really awesome if we actually had a labor department that did its job, because some of the people who are getting the virus right now are doing so because we just do not have adequate workplace safety regimes. And so people are getting it and transmitting it at work because their work is not set up in the safest manner possible. And I think if you look at other countries, they set up essential work in a way that is not a transmission concern in the way that it is in the U.S.
Yeah, and you bring up the essential work thing. Are we past that yet? I mean, because recently we had a guy on the program who was the head of a transit union out west, who was saying, there was the transit authority was trying to claw back their raises, and trying to pull back money from them. And we've seen this across the country. That hero pay that was being thrown out in huge press releases, and hey, look at how wonderful we are. We're throwing some pennies in praise at our employees to come out and risk their lives. All that's been clawed back almost at this point. But we don't see many press releases. What happened to that? We were going to help fund the heroes who are showing up to work stuff. What happened with that?
I mean, I think everyone just assumed this was going to be over more quickly than it has been. And part of that's because it should be over by now. Again, look at like Germany, look at South Korea. These are not small countries. In the case of South Korea, they're a lot closer to China and a lot more economically integrated with China. So it's not like they had it any easier than the United States. They just had a rational government that inspired trust in their people, and then they were able to address the problem. Similarly going on in Germany, and even like Italy is now basically fine, and Italy was astonishingly hard hit early on. And I think people were willing to do things like bosses were willing to pay a little bit extra for a while. We had a willingness to be like reasonably decent human beings for like the matter of weeks, but the months that are required, approaching a half year, I think we're past people's patience. And this is where it would have been really awesome to have a leader who knew how to run a country. It
would have been. Maybe, like I'm waiting to see the fallout from Sturgis over the weekend of 250,000 people showing up to be packed into a small town like sardines, and then, hey, taking it back wherever they go. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. So last question I've got for you, in looking at these 4 executive orders, obviously the one doing away with the payroll tax for short term, this moratorium on evictions, which I'm not quite sure how they're going to work out, or the extra $400 for unemployment, which is kind of a weird thing. He's saying that they'll give $400, but the states have to kick in a quarter of it. But if they're really nice to him, he might waive it. What the hell is that?
Well, I mean, there's also the fact that the total amount of money that even Trump believes he can repurpose toward unemployment would only last a matter of several weeks. I saw an estimate like maybe 5 weeks maximum.
Right.
But yeah, that also just assumes that, I mean, the departments of labor across the country who have to manage unemployment insurance, they're running off of computers that are vastly weaker than those many of us carry in our pockets. It's a sad situation that in general underscores how we underinvest in government, and then we get the government that we deserve. If you're penny wise and don't invest in computer technology, your ability to be like, hey, we're going to change the unemployment insurance formula this week, it's much harder than it sounds.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bunch of pennies here and some pennies there, and some states will get a little bit more and some will get less. But in the end, it's not even remotely what Americans deserve.
So, but the question I was going to ask is this it? I mean, McConnell's clearly not going to move on anything. They've gone home through September 14th. Is this the best we get? Is this the end of the stimulus? Does Ron Johnson get his wish and everything's blown up and there's no more money to help people weather this?
I don't know. I mean, Trump is not really capable of long-term thinking. Trump definitely does not want to address the Postal Service and the need to fund state and local elections. He wants to make sure the election is basically close enough to steal. I think politics can matter here. The more it looks like it's going to be an overwhelming rebuke of Trump, the more likely he would feel the need to try to do normal politics, which is to try to address the problem and reduce economic pain. I think it's all very fluid. I think a lot of actors are in uncharted territory. I do not think McConnell has a plan. I do not think Trump has a plan. And I think what Democrats do matters. I think we can we can cause pain, we can cause fear, we can cause worry on the Republican side, or they can be like, we can get through this. And so we just all have to try harder, basically.
There you go. Jeff, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, keep up the great work there at the Revolving Door Project. Appreciate the time.
You.
Good stuff. Our good friend Jeff Hauser. Make sure you check out their website, therevolvingdoorproject.org. They do really great work. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2013. That was the day a somewhat unexpected new union formed in Bangor, Maine. Local 207 of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers represents lobster fishermen. Lobster fishermen are known for being fiercely independent, so it surprised many when some started talking union. One of those to bring up the early idea of forming a union was Magnus Lane, a fisherman originally from Iceland. There was cause for concern in the Maine lobster industry that year. A glut of lobsters had driven prices down to a 40-year low. At the same time, fuel and bait prices continued to rise. More than 100 lobstermen and women attended that first meeting. They elected officers and settled on bylaws. In a television interview, newly elected local president Rocky Ally explained, "We're the ones who catch the lobster. We should be able to control the price." Over the next year, membership grew to 600 members from up and down the Maine coast. A year after the union was founded, boat captain Julie Eaton explained the importance of the new union in a newspaper interview. She said, "For the first time, we feel like we have a voice. For the first time, we feel hope that we can protect our way of life." While some lobster fishermen support the union, others have organized against unionization. But the union has been able to win some legislative protections. For example, they were able to ensure that lobster fishermen can keep their fishing license while on active military duty. This union continues to chart new waters in the fight for working people in Maine. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Jeff brought up college football, and look, I think most of college football is probably done for the season. As the story today was, at least 10 Big Ten players have evidently tested for this heart condition, myocarditis, which I guess is, inflammation of the heart where your heart kind of like blows up, which is a one of the side effects of the coronavirus. And this I guess has played into the decision by the Big Ten, a major football conference for those who don't know, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, no football. They're suspending the entire season, as they are for all of the sports in the fall, until I guess at least the beginning of 2021. The Pac-12, they have postponed their season as well, again citing this potential serious cardiac side effects in athletes' statement. And if you're talking about this kind of response in what you would consider elite athletes, to use the Pac-12's word, people who, they're at the peak of their health, at the peak of their fitness. If they're suffering pretty significant side effects, what's it going to do to somebody in their 40s who sits behind a desk all day? What's it going to do to the average person? And if the Big Ten is going, hey, we're going to hold out. We're not going to put our players at that risk. What is that? What message should that be sending to the rest of us? And this is what I told my kids from the beginning. I said, look, the reality is when you've got Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, all the college sports. Because back in March, we were supposed to go see the women's March Madness. They canceled all of it. When that happens, that's a lot of people who have a lot of financial interest in things going, this is bad enough for us to give up money. This is bad enough for us to give up the massive profit that comes from these endeavors. Which is, again, where I started going, this is probably really very serious. Because it's never happened before in my lifetime. So here you are in this moment where you've got these conferences saying, and you've got the President of the United States saying that, you know, he wants everything open. He wants people to go back. He wants it all. Wants to push kids back into schools. Wants to push these athletes back into the fields. That's not leadership. Sorry, it's just not. You know, maybe had he done the right thing right from the very beginning, maybe had he responded as quickly as he did to Kamala Harris being named as Biden's VP, maybe if he had done his job that quickly, maybe we wouldn't be here. Maybe we wouldn't be in this moment. And that's the frustrating and angering part in all of this. Because with the right leadership, with the right direction, pursuing the right policy, and having smart people doing it, instead of your local neighborhood epidemiologist who barely got out of 8th grade science telling us what we should be doing. All because I don't want to wear a mask. Scary times, my friend. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
As horrible as the COVID-19 crisis is, it has brought out the best in the American people. The selflessness of frontline nurses and doctors, for example. Yet, it has also amplified one of the worst character flaws in our society, namely the me-first greed of corporate chieftains. Just last August, we were told that a new, more democratic corporate ethic was emerging. The CEOs of 181 big-name giants signed a public pledge that henceforth they would run their corporations not solely to maximize shareholder profits, but also to benefit workers, communities, and other economic stakeholders. Then, only 5 months later, boom, the pandemic hit. Profits dropped, and the new magnanimous spirit of togetherness vanished from these corporate boardrooms. Immediately, masses of their workers were being punted out the door. Health benefits were coldly terminated just when needed most, and the pledge to serve the common good went into the shredder. Well, retorted such pledge signers as Arne Sorensen, CEO of the Marriott Hotel Empire, revenues are drying up, so all promises are negated. In a March video message dispatching most of Marriott's employees, Sorensen cluelessly added this insult to their injury: I wish you good health and a sense of optimism. A couple of weeks later, workers learned that while Marriott was cutting off their paychecks, it had doled out $160 million in dividends to its rich shareholders, a group that includes Sorensen. This is Jim Hightower saying, the CEO did say he'll forego some of his $1 million salary this year, but that's disingenuous, since he also gets some $11 million a year in incentive pay and other compensation. And while workers are now consigned to the unemployment line, Sorensen is in line for a 7% pay hike next year and a multi-million-dollar cash bonus.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting story coming out of Connecticut today. Evidently, the Republican who is running for Congress up in Connecticut's 2nd congressional district, evidently, he just dropped out. I guess that's what happens when you get arrested for first-degree unlawful restraint and second-degree strangulation. Evidently, him and his girlfriend had an argument, and who knows? Who knows what happens to these things? But from all reports, I guess he's tried to strangle her. Probably not somebody we want in Congress, and good to see him go. But not surprising with today's GOP. We got Mr. Grabber by the you-know-what as president. And with today's announcement of Harris as Biden's pick, immediately my mind, and I know this is wrong, but my mind went to, I wonder if Trump would try and grab her by the you-know-what, and I wonder if she would knock him out. That I would pay to see. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on today's choice, I've asked our good friend Scott Dworkin to come talk with us. Scott is the co-founder of the Democratic Coalition, also the host of the wonderful podcast, The Dworkin Report. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Glad to be back, Rick. How are you?
So, thoughts on the little announcement?
Perfect choice.
You're in the perfect choice camp.
Yes, I am in the perfect choice camp. This is what it is, so it's perfect.
Okay.
Because this is what we're gonna do, and this is the plan forward. I think, given the situation, this is the best possible pick.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on.
See ya.
Well, I mean, because if it's the perfect pick, of which, look, she wasn't my first choice, but she's my choice now. And I said this about Biden. Biden was my fifth choice. He's now my number one choice. The Biden-Harris ticket is now my number one choice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're not a supporter of Biden, then even if you're not a supporter of either presidential campaigns, you are a Trump supporter at this point. So I want people to keep that in mind. Every vote counts, every vote matters, and I want to make sure that he loses in the biggest landslide ever in American history, which is hard because there's a lot of landslides.
Yeah, there are a couple.
Few.
There's a couple.
But, yeah, but we want it to be one of the bigger ones because we want it to be so bad that he doesn't even contest anything, which would have to be an insurmountable number, which I think is attainable.
I hope so, because look, I mean, all the things that I see lining up on them fighting mail-in ballots, and a lot of people are going to be voting by mail-in ballot. I see this is where they're going to, in my view, try and pull all their shenanigans.
Yeah, we're working on a lot of things in regard to election protection. It could be whether or not, in some states we're going to set up ballot drop boxes so it skips the post office altogether. In some states, we also are going to make sure that people vote safely in person. Depending on the district, we're going to want some people to actually have to show up. Given history and what we know about a certain district, sometimes if you're able-bodied and willing, then we want you to do that. If there's not any other safe alternative and you're not sure if your vote's going to count, then there's that. There's also drive-through voting that's available in some states. So there's a lot of different things that we can do in different states, and we're focused right now on Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Colorado. So, obviously we're working in Maine and North Carolina and South Carolina and Kentucky as well. But we're gonna focus on the states that control the election and the districts where we think are going to be taken advantage of, or they're not going to send enough ballots to, or they're not going to, like they did in Georgia, where they didn't bring any of the power cords for the voting machines for an entire precinct. And so, these are the types of fraud that we have to experience. Remember, we're up against the United States government, the Trump administration as a whole, and also Trump's campaign, Russia, North Korea, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, and so we're working against that, in Brazil probably as well. But we're working against that tidal wave, and I still think we don't need to cheat to win, and he can't win without cheating, and I think that's pathetic and sad. And anybody who supports that, I'll just it's not going to be pleasant, rebuilding, but we won't need them to rebuild.
No, you said before we went on air that you saw Joe Biden and you saw Kamala Harris together, and you go, that's the winning ticket. What made you think that?
I've researched. I've done a lot of vetting. We wrote books. Me and Grant Stern. We wrote books about Kamala Harris and also on Joe Biden. We vetted them like hard, and we put everything out there that could be dug up, that we know about. I'm sure that more stuff will be dug up over time because that's how it works. But given the circumstances, given the social media presence, the timing, and just what I think America needs Kamala Harris, and that's exactly the right pick. And I think she found out today, very like 90 minutes before or something like that. Joe called her and asked her to join the ticket. And so I think given everything and how much he gets under her skin, and how much support she has from her family and friends who will come out and speak on her behalf as surrogates. I mean, it is a whole new membership and an invigorating branch of the campaign that is going to take off like a rocket ship. They have Karine Jean-Pierre, who was appointed as the chief of staff, and she was already senior advisor for Biden. And so they've got a great team who knows what they're doing. And I don't know if you remember, but Karine actually was the one when there was a random dude that just like charged the stage to try to grab a microphone. Karine was the one who stood in between her and him and Harris on stage in public, where she thought she was going to get attacked or something. So this is the kind of person that we want as a chief of staff in this kind of situation. I think we need to finish strong, and I think that this is going to be a boost. Seeing the reality and stop with the whole, is it going to be this person, this way? Seeing the reality, you see the vision of like that ticket can win. I've seen it before. I felt it before, and it was in 2008. And so I feel that again. And thank God for that feeling.
So the gut is feeling good. So, but you're not insulted, right? Because today on Fox, I guess it was Fox Sports Radio, Trump did an early morning interview that said some men might be offended, or I guess it was insulted. Some men might be insulted that Biden chose a woman. Are you feeling insulted?
Cool. Those guys can. I'm not gonna say expletives, but like, good. You're gonna vote for Trump anyways. I don't care. Like you chauvinist pig. Like we don't have time for you. Next. That's how I feel about that. Like, are some guys going to be offended? I mean, are they that weak? Are they that pathetic? Probably. And so go for it. You're pissed off about that? Great. Go vote for Trump because Biden chose a woman. That's the dumbest thing. But I'm sure that there will be some people who do that. But not more people than people who turn out for Harris. Not even close.
Yeah, but I'll take our woman over Trump's woman any day.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you saw the evangelical leader who called Mike Pence Trump's submissive wife.
No, I did not.
I mean, so I'll take our woman over his woman any day.
Right.
In fact, I got to tell you, I'm waiting for the. I want to circle the date. I want to know when the vice presidential debate is, because to me that's where the fireworks are going to be.
Yeah, it's. I have a feeling that Mother is going to call in sick for him on that day. He's not going to want to go to the debate. I mean, there's just no way for him. I mean, I think his jab tonight was like, and it was nice to see, actually. I mean, he's terrible, but like it was still nice to see him be like, well, I'll see you in Salt Lake City. That's all it was. And it was like, whoa. It's like Trump's going to be disappointed in your jab there. But it was like just innocent looking and not as just awful. And it's like, great, maybe you guys can sit down and have a discussion. But I have a feeling that, Pence is going to be as boring, thumbtack on the wall kind of policy, talk about that. And Harris is going to hammer it home, but also, use fine touch with that. So I think it's going to be a great debate. It's going to be boring, as most debates are, and it's also going to be policy based more than most. But I think they're not ready for Harris, and they'll never be. That's just a fact, because I think that they're backed into a corner now, thinking We're anti-Black Lives Matter. We're anti-Dreamers. We're anti-teachers. We're anti-farmers. We're anti-everything. You know what I mean? Like, we're anti-keeping people in their homes. We're anti-keeping them safe from the virus. We're anti-mask. We're anti-everything. You know, we're done with the anti. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What name one thing you're going to do instead of go golfing and hide in your bunker on the golf course? Like, what are you going to do for Americans? People are dying. And I know that this sort of nuclear blast that the coronavirus per se is, I think that it's still going off, and people are not able to grieve and understand what's happening yet. And when the dust settles, which is soon, probably in the next month or so, and people start realizing, like, oh my, what is happening? Like, I think there will be a reset, and these Biden and Harris are the perfect people to do it. And I just, given everything, not to mention the fact, and I remind this to people all the time, one of his most trusted advisors besides Dr. Biden, his wife, is Barack Obama. So getting us back on track and resetting things and getting things set up, I think he'll be in a great position to help with that as well.
Now, for me, it's not just about the White House. It's the down ticket, the Senate, more importantly than anything, because it doesn't matter if we elect the Biden-Harris ticket. If you don't take the Senate back, if you still have Mitch McConnell, we still have the same gridlock. We still don't get a stimulus bill passed through. We still don't get help to change the direction of the country and clean up the mess. And there's some good races across the country that I think there are some really good opportunities to pick up. Georgia being one of those states where there are 2 Senate seats open right now.
Yeah, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina is a prime pickup opportunity. Texas is interesting. It's on the map, for us now. I would say that, there may need some more time for it, for us to really take the state fully blue. But I think it's winnable for Biden this year. And I think the worst part about it is Republicans have to spend a lot of money there. They're going to have to spend a lot of money because they don't know how influential Biden is there. It's hard to poll people right now as well. Like, everything is kind of fluid, and it's really going to come down to, I think it's going to come down to who's the best candidate this time, instead of who can have the best barbs and, I'm going to vote for him because I hate her, or I'm not going to vote at all. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. Like, I think people have moved past that. And as long as we keep our eyes on the prize and make sure that we actually vote, I think that we have a chance in places like Kentucky, where I've won statewide before. It is hard. It is not easy, but it's doable with our Democratic governor that we have there, Mr. Bashir. I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential out there. And we've won in places I would have never expected it before. And Nebraska is an example, Kansas statewide. This is all attainable. I want to win in Idaho. I want to win in Wyoming. I want to win. Those are pretty Republican states, and I think that we need to expand what we're talking about and make it even broader and appealing to people. But at this point, there couldn't be starker and more or clearer divisions between what they stand for. They stand for nothing good, and we're standing for just like even the basic premise of democracy and freedom and peaceful protesting and
sanity.
Sanity,
reason, logic,
no propaganda, and not committing treason every single day, or doing a corrupt act, or taking a day off or a weekend off for a golf vacation at your own resort where you pocket taxpayer money that's paid by the security and staff at your institution, while they're paying hurricane level rates for the hotel rooms, which are maximum for them, while they're sitting there paying top dollar for the food that they have to pay for there, while they're sitting there working security at a constant at these golf courses. This is going to be the most corrupt thing that we've ever had. And I thought the Russia scandal was bad, but his coronavirus cover-up, I guess, this is the most corrupt. Like, it involves too many deaths, hiding death, trying to cover up death, and also him being responsible for the murder of Americans. And that's I do actually believe that, and we've talked about things like that in the past. But if he had done more people, tens of thousands of people would be alive right now, and I think he should be held responsible for that.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where I'm hoping that Joe Biden doesn't do what every other administration has done, is go, oh, that's in the past, we're going to let it go. One of the biggest knocks I had against Obama was that he didn't go after those banking criminals and didn't pursue throwing them in jail. For me, I think you have to go back and you have to clean up the mess that they made and hold people accountable, so that maybe future politicians don't do it. But I want to go back to the Senate for a minute, because the Democrats need to pick up 4 to gain control of the House. Is that right?
Yeah, and hold Jones.
And hold Jones. And there are 2 really good-looking ones right now in Arizona and in Maine.
And Peters in Michigan. As well.
And you got those 2, and then possibly picking up 2 and one in Arizona, one in Maine. Where do you see the other potential, more likely victories?
Colorado, I think, is a prime target, and then North Carolina. North Carolina, they're not very. It's interesting state, because for years they would vote for a Democratic governor and a Republican Senate, and it was just odd, but they are very candidate based in North Carolina, and I think Biden brings it, knocks Tillis out of the Senate. I think he's been absolutely useless, and Burr has been of no help there. So I think of the 2 states, there. I also think Georgia is a potential, but again, it's you have a governor there that cheats, and so you have to assume the worst, and that's what we are doing. We're the guys that are making a plan for everything, and we want to make sure that all angles are covered, and we're ready for election day, and everything building up to that. It's a different world right now, but I'll tell you, I wish that we had all this knowledge, all this power, all this organized nature right now in 2016, but we didn't. And so winning back the House and winning statewide in Alabama, and other races that we've won over time, it's built up to this moment. And so this is it. Every single day matters. Every single thing that you do matters.
Yep.
And you can't just talk the talk. You have to write about it. You have to talk to your friends and family and make sure that they actually know the importance of this, and they're reminded, remind them of the thing that made them most mad about Trump, and also remind them about what Biden stands for and how he wouldn't do that. And so you can just give the very clear divisions. And I think the biggest thing is, Biden, day one, will sit there and he'll look Republicans in the face and be like, come on, gather around, and he'll try and unite everybody. I won't be the most keen of that, because there's going to be a lot of those members of Congress that'll be under investigation. But there's going to be some people that we have to work with in order to get things done. And he'll be able to bridge that divide and rebuild. I think we'll also be working on getting different Republicans in office in mostly Republican states, and helping with the primaries there as well, to push incumbent senators that sat on their hands out of office and replace them with Republicans who have some sort of dignity and self-respect, which doesn't exist right now in the Senate for the Republican Party.
No, I think they all have to go. I think you're right. Last question I've got for you, because one of the things that I'm most hopeful for is that we get a government that's competent. I know you laugh at that, but I want actually qualified people to run the different agencies. I want people who know what the hell they're doing. And if we have another coronavirus type event, that there are going to be people there who know how to handle it. And maybe we don't end up in this mess that we're in again. I'm hoping Biden's the guy who brings together a highly skilled team that's going to bring back some function to our government.
These are workers. I know these people. I know the senior staff. I know their staff nationally. These are good people. These are people who are workers and believe in fighting for Americans for real. And they put their lives out there in regards to everything on the line for campaigning, and most of them have done it for decades. I think that we shouldn't underestimate the strength of who we can put together, and who's willing to come back into government to rebuild our country. And I think that we'll see it very clearly that we have everything going for us, but we have to act like we're behind at all times, and we have to sprint through the finish. Those are like, we can't act like we're ahead at any point. And then once we finish here, and if we were to win in November, then we need to make sure he actually leaves the White House. And then when Biden goes in, we need to make sure that the people are held accountable, and that, as you had mentioned, will be my full-time job.
No, that's
I will make sure that happens.
No, I mean, this is where, again, I go back to, and I said this earlier, in 2009, we all went home. Hey, we won. We did the right thing. Hey, history was made. We broke our arms, patting ourselves on the back, and we didn't get the hope and change we wanted. The hope is this moment, this time, we stay active, we stay engaged, and we push a President Biden to do what we need him to do, and what ultimately I think he'll want to do.
Yeah, I think he would be great. But, as of right now, if the election were held today, Trump will probably win. So just think about those words, whether or not you think they're true or not, and just remember them, because it gives me a chill when I said them out loud.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear that.
Well, I mean, that's what we need to repeat every single day, is that it's reality. Like, he can win. Yeah. So let's make sure he doesn't.
Let's make sure. Scott, I appreciate the time. Good stuff, man.
Thank you.
Our good friend Scott Dworkin. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union was founded, after the victorious strike of 1934 that established the Union Hiring Hall. West Coast Union leaders embarked on an inland campaign to organize the thousands of warehouse workers who handled shipped goods. But West Coast dock workers overwhelmingly chose to join the CIO after it was expelled from the AFL earlier that year. They found that the ILA planned to abandon the warehouse workers they had worked so hard to organize. They also opposed dues assessments to fight the CIO and disagreed with the ILA's hostility to minimum wage laws, Social Security, and unemployment insurance. Radicals like Harry Bridges and others had established themselves not only as workers' leaders, but also led attacks on Jim Crow racism in the ranks and in the industry. The success of the 1934 strike was due in part to the welcoming of blacks into the ranks of the Union. In his book, Workers on the Waterfront, historian Bruce Nelson notes that, quote, the ILWU's well-known opposition to racial discrimination was an important factor in the Union's expansion into Hawaii, not only on the waterfront, but among sugar and pineapple plantation workers. The triumph of the ILWU in Hawaiian agriculture brought about a degree of fraternization across racial lines that few had thought possible. Since then, the Union has beat back numerous Taft-Hartley and McCarthy-era attacks. More recently, the ILWU has been in the forefront of broader social justice struggles, leading walkouts and work stoppages for various political causes. Today, it represents close to 60,000 workers, including those locals that initially refused to affiliate. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Everybody thought had the inside straight because of the campaign, because of a lot of exposure. I just think she was the safe choice. And we can all say we had our favorite or whatever, but it is what it is, and we'll see where it takes us. And here to share some thoughts on the choice of Kamala Harris as Joe Biden's running mate, I've asked our good friend Kariya Putney-Baker to come talk with us. Kariya is the treasurer of the DNC's Black Caucus, also one of my good gun safety friends. Kariya, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, brother, thanks for having me on again.
So let's just throw that out there. Thoughts on the Harris pick? Good, bad, indifferent?
I absolutely love it. And listening to your intro, and you're saying that Senator Harris was the safe pick. Think about that in context. The black woman was the safe pick. That just is emblematic of how far we've come, because this has not happened before, right? We have a chance to show young girls of color, like my two daughters, that they really can aspire to be some of the most powerful people on the planet. And their skin color, their heritage, isn't going to hold them back, and they too could be seen as the safe pick. I love this pick.
A lot of people on the Twitter is very happy with it. They've gotten some blowback because some other folks, they've all got their favorites. Why do you think Harris was the best pick outside of my assessment of the safe pick?
I think she brings some extra stuff to the table that helps balance out the ticket. Joe Biden was not my first pick for president, and he was my third.
He was my fifth.
He's not right. I mean, he's not able to do what Barack and Kamala or Corey can do. But that's why you need someone else who can. Joe can't do what Barack can do, and there's some things that Barack can't do that Joe could. They balance each other out. They had a good rapport. And I think that Kamala and Uncle Joe have a similar rapport. And I think that she's able to speak to a segment of the population that maybe he can't, or at least can't do it as well as she could. And I think it's a good balanced ticket. But I also think it shows an immense amount of progress in that we have a black woman that's going to be our next vice president. I think that just says an enormous amount of where we've come. I think Dr. King and Malcolm X are doing backflips right now in heaven with this pick.
No, I think it's a good pick. I think it was the right pick. I would have personally. I was pushing more towards Val Deming, but there's reasons for that outside of a bunch of stuff. So where do you see the attack lines? Because right from the start, within 30 minutes. You had the Trump campaign put out an attack video calling her phony Kamala and Sleepy Joe. And, my first response was, boy, if they'd only responded to the virus as quickly as they responded to the VP choice, boy, we may have had this whipped by now.
If only they would work as hard to deal with this pandemic as they work to insult other Americans, we would be much better off than we are right now with this pandemic. We wouldn't have 160,000 Americans dead from it. But I'm looking forward to having a president in our White House who doesn't look to insult people and give stupid, childish names. Sleepy Joe. I mean, that's the dumbest thing on earth. We need someone who's got some sensibility to them and is ready to be president on Donald Trump's 1,000+ day. He still ain't ready to be president.
Yeah.
I don't care what attack they levy at our ticket. It won't matter. It shows just how desperate they are. Donald Trump does not actually want to be president. He likes the idea of being president. I want someone who actually wants to be president.
And actually wants to lead and solve some of the problems that we clearly have. And there are, an overwhelming number of problems. And as I've been saying the last several days, I think Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are causing as much chaos and grief and as much damage and destruction as possible so that the next administration spends the next 2 years just figuring out what's wrong, let alone being able to deal with all of these crises that are being created. At least that's my thought.
And that's in addition to trying to wear American voters out by having so much chaos. People might just be apathetic and give up. But that's why it's important for us to remind folks of how it is a moral imperative for you to vote. This idea that you you have to be inspired or excited to go vote, to me is wild. I believe that there are far too many people that fought, bled, and died for our right to vote that I don't need to be excited or inspired. I'm inspired by the fact that I know we have some sensible folks who can lead on day one and take control of the mess that we're currently in. I'm inspired by having 2 champions for gun violence prevention being in our White House. I'm inspired by having 2 folks who are going to make sure we don't have kids in cages at the border. I'm inspired by folks who are going to no longer side with white supremacists, who are going to equivocate on racism and white supremacy. I'm inspired by the fact I get to go vote for a person who picked a black woman for his vice president. This whole thing is a huge cultural shift, and I think all of that in a broader context reminds us where we have been and where we are right now and how much further we have to go, but we are so much closer to making our country a more perfect union now.
No, I'm right there with you. But, here we're in this moment where, after these last 3.5 years, there's still some question of the outcome of this election. And for me, I'll be honest, I think in a fair election, there's no way Donald Trump is reelected. I think most Americans, at least the sane, rational ones, are tired of all of the shenanigans, all of the insanity, all of the, the fire hose of chaos. My fear is that this election doesn't come down to our votes. It comes down to how many can be stolen, how many can be suppressed, and what the Republicans and Trump can pull off, and especially around what's happening with the Postal Service, with Friday night's massacre and all of the craziness around that. That's my great concern.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, it's concerning given, what happened in 2016 where you had Scott Walker and his goons here in Wisconsin use racist voter ID policy to disenfranchise, poor and people of color, right? So they are trying to use whatever mechanism they can to disincentivize people from voting, whether they want to do it by law or wear them out and make them apathetic. But I think folks are waking up to this and saying, we aren't going to accept that. You're not going to steal my right to vote. We're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure people have adequate access to the ballot box, whether they're mailing their vote in or they're doing it in person, which I hope fewer people do, given this pandemic. But this is emblematic of what Wisconsin Republicans tried to do this past spring, in that they were trying to have a separate election for the state Supreme Court race that wasn't on the presidential primary ballot, because they knew the presidential primary ballot would draw more people out, and Republicans rely on low voter turnout to win.
Right.
So what ended up happening is that they couldn't get a separate ballot, and they couldn't do away with early voting and things like that. And the Democrat candidate, Jill Karofsky, won by 10 points, something that was not expected. One of my best friends called me that Tuesday back in April, and he was like, hey, Jill's going to lose. Like, I just can't see how we pull this off. And then she wins by 10 points. If we do our job and remind people how important it is to go vote, and remind people when those dates are to mail your ballot back in or request a ballot and things like that, we can win this race. Up and down the ballot, we can win races. But Republicans are going to fight tooth and nail to prevent that from happening, not because their policies are better, but because they only want to hold on to power. If their policy was better, they would want more people to vote for it, because it would be a testament to how good it is. That's not the case what you see here.
No, you're right. And it's a testament to how little policy chops they do have, because look what's gotten done over the last 3.5 years. All they've really accomplished legislatively is a massive handout for the very wealthy and for big corporations in that big tax bill, that big tax giveaway they had back a couple of years ago. That seems to be it.
Yeah. That is it, right? Well, they've achieved chaos. They've achieved, like, tearing their party apart. I remember when I ran for Congress in 2016, I was in a house party fundraiser for my campaign the weekend that Access Hollywood tape came out. And There was 100 people in this room. They're all giddy and thinking like, this is over and done with. You can't come back from this. And I said, look, we shouldn't be giddy about this because one, we still don't know what's going to happen in several weeks here. But two, we also shouldn't enjoy like the destruction of a party like because I think we do need two vibrant, honest, and decent parties. And I think we can disagree with what Republicans stand for, but the party structure needs to exist. Donald Trump has torn it apart, and the Republicans let him do it, and they're going to pay dearly for this. If we make sure we do our job correctly, we can win seats up and down the ballot all across the country and have control of things in ways we haven't had in a very long time, and can not only correct the mistakes and nonsense that they've done, we can do some really, really good things, whether that's gun violence prevention, protecting women's reproductive rights, immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, healthcare reform, and do it in a substantive and meaningful way. That's what they have given us because they were that bad.
No, you're right. The reality is, I talk to conservatives who used to be conservatives are now Trump supporters, and I say, what policies are you looking for them to move forward on? Because the fact that they've done nothing to help now with another stimulus package at a time when more than 40 million people are unemployed, millions of people are without health insurance now because of this pandemic, and we still don't have a handle on it. I'm going, what is it that they're doing? They've done that brings you, and they just there's nothing. They come back to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They're both socialists.
Right.
And
one of my good friends, his son and my son play soccer and basketball, at the grade school, and he's a Republican. He sent me a text the other day, not kidding. He said, "Curry, this is the first time I'm ever going to vote for a Democrat in my life." And I thought, this is just showing how much of a sea change we're seeing right now, where you have staunch Republicans. Joe Walsh, who's a friend of your show, right?
Yep.
Who's become one of my dear friends, thanks to you, by the way, sent a tweet out today. Let's go kick their ass. Same guy who was dead set against helping Barack Obama do anything.
Yep.
Look how far he's come. That's how bad their guy is. You cannot be proud about that. I don't care how much money you've got. Tax breaks and all that kind of thing should not supersede the ability for your children to look up to your president or not and say, this is someone I would feel comfortable being a role model for my child. You cannot do that with the man that currently occupies that White House.
No, you're absolutely right. So the question I have is, and this is a question that Joe and I have bounced around together. How do we reach those folks? Is there a moment of forgiveness? Is there a way to go, we got it. You had a moment, come back to the fold. We'll embrace you with open arms. Let's figure out how to fix everything that's gone wrong and let's move forward. Is there a way to do that?
I think so. And I think that first starts with honesty, civility, and decency. And I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris embody those three traits. But I think the other way you do it is by policy. And I don't think you tell people you can do something and then you can't. Or you give them the pie in the sky kind of idea. You do what you are able to do, and then you keep pushing to improve upon certain things. You keep improving upon the Affordable Care Act, not tear it apart. If you want wholesale health care reform, you got to have something to build on, but then you need to have a Congress that you can have to work with, which is why we need to get more Democrats elected. And I think if we explain things to people in a way that isn't going to be divisive or corrosive, or something that gets someone to retreat to their corner because we're calling whoever the opposition might be sleepy this and crying that or whatever, and talk about people in a decent and civil way, we can get back to actually doing the people's business. There are some things we definitely need to improve on. Healthcare, I think, is the number one thing people vote on. People need healthcare. Too many people are dying because they don't have access to healthcare. We need to fix that issue. But we need a Congress that's going to work with the White House to get there. Then we need state governors that are going to work with the Congress at the federal level to get those things implemented. How many red states sued the federal government over the Affordable Care Act. Wisconsin was one of them before we threw out Scott Walker. So that just shows us with just one issue. If we elect more Democrats and get them into positions of power, we can have the policy that we believe in. But these things don't happen overnight. They're going to take some time to get there. But we need to be honest with people about that fact, but also remind them we have their best interests at heart. That's how you bring people back into the fold.
Yeah, as I've said a million times, I believe we all want similar things. I think we all want good, safe neighborhoods, good schools, good family-sustaining wage jobs, safe jobs. I think we all want the same things. It's just we've got different roadmaps.
Right.
And
I agree.
sadly,
I mean, we have, like, all of us know where we want to get. We just have a different view of how to get there.
yeah.
But I think, we're not always supposed to agree on everything. We shouldn't. But when we don't is where the decency and civility come into play. You don't have to be my enemy if we disagree. That's okay. It's okay to find common ground on something. That's not like you backtracking, or we should celebrate that you were able to find common ground and compromise on some things to find the best of what the two sides can get together. We've become so polarized in things, and it's not being helped by someone calling their opponent sleepy this or crying. It's so immature and childish and beneath the office that man occupies.
Yeah, as I pointed out, very presidential. And
Right.
and you get that every day. Every day you could wake up and go, today's tweet or today's comment or whatever is we've sunk to a new low. And when you thought you can't get any lower, it gets lower.
There is no floor, right? He's going to keep taking us further and further down in the gutter, all while speaking gibberish. I mean, he clearly doesn't even know what he doesn't know. He just doesn't like to shut up. At some point, the people who actually know things, like Dr. Fauci, let the man talk instead of Trump getting up there talking about injecting disinfectant into the body. Like, come on. Seriously. I'm excited to have a president who doesn't think injecting disinfectant into your body is a way to deal with a global pandemic. I'm excited. Look, hey, that motivates me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited for a guy who's not going to say it's just going to go away magically. The magic thinking that's come out of Trump has been, to me, very dangerous. And I'm also excited by the fact that as we're now learning more about that the early response to the virus was they had a response. They chose to do nothing because it was happening to Democratic states. I'm excited to have an administration who doesn't look at that first and foremost and only.
Right. I mean, because it's like what President Kennedy said. We shouldn't be looking for the Democrat answer or the Republican answer. We should be looking for the right answer. And when you consider you have 160,000 people in our country dead, their death certificate doesn't say party affiliation on it. Their loved ones don't care whether or not they're Republican or Democrat. They just care that their loved one is no longer with them.
Yeah.
We should care about that first. Partisanship should not enter in how you protect our country. But that's all he does. He vilifies the other side, all while trying to get himself on the Washington, not the Washington Monument, but the
Mount Rushmore. You believe that? You believe that?
Yes. Honestly, with Donald Trump, yes, I can.
No. Look, as soon as he gave that speech there, said they were giving a speech there, I go, it's not going to be long till he wants his mug on the side of it because he puts his name on everything. So it doesn't surprise me even a little bit.
No, it doesn't. But it also shows he just simply doesn't have any self-reflection, or is he aware of the magnitude of just the simple ask of that? I mean, he's only been in office for not even a full term yet, and he wants to get on Mount Rushmore? I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, he's got some noteworthy accomplishments. He crashed an economy that was doing really well, and look, he botched the virus response. Those are noteworthy. History will remember him.
That plus, I mean, he elevated white supremacists and QAnon and all that craziness. I'm sure they would agree that he should be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, well, I think we should have a statue of him, but we just put it in a pigeon sanctuary.
We definitely should. But at the end of the day, I think what's going to happen here is not only we're going to win in November and then have Joe get inaugurated in January, I think we're going to have a revitalization of our country because we're so far gone down this dark rabbit hole of nonsense that we can see that we can make some simple changes in some things. And the way we conduct business, the way we can separate politics from the way our Attorney General functions, the way we can make sure that the public knows that the Attorney General is not your personal lawyer, the way we can stop using different governmental agencies as attack dogs against those you don't like. We can like reinstitute these national institutions to be what they're supposed to be instead of what they become. But I think what this does show, though, is that we just didn't have a good enough watch on the gate, right? That we might have gotten too complacent with how amazing Barack Obama was for 8 years and just didn't do a good enough job. Now we can see how far gone things can get if we don't do our job. I blame us for this.
I do too.
They cheated, sure. And all the policies they put into place to make sure black folks don't vote, they did all that. Stacey Abrams should be governor of Georgia right now if they hadn't cheated. I got that. But we still need to do our job. We know what they're going to do. The rest is up to us. Either we decide that we aren't going to let this happen anymore and make sure this country works for all of us, or we can let Donald Trump do all the kind of mob nonsense he wants to do. Think about this, though. Think about, like, he's doing the things out loud that you're supposed to say in private and doesn't care one bit. He's like John Gotti because he was at Dapper Don, was on all the magazines. That's Donald Trump.
You're spot on. Like you said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a vote. And we're basically seeing that 165,000 people dead. And he still believes he's the guy. So last bit, I want to reiterate. You're okay with Kamala Harris, right?
Oh, I'm not okay with Kamala Harris. I love this pick, without a doubt. My mom is black, my aunts are black, my daughters are black, cousins are black. This means a lot to people of color, and that glass ceiling for young girls and women around the world can see that we are really, really taking aim at that glass ceiling to really kick it through and finally see a woman be in at least the number 2 most important person on the planet, right? I mean, this does and says a lot for progress and for communities of color, and I cannot wait to go vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in November.
There you go. Corey, I appreciate the time, man. Always great talking with you. Appreciate it. Look forward to having you back again real soon.
All right, brother. Love to be on anytime.
Good stuff. Our good friend Corey Pennebaker. He is the treasurer of the DNC's Black Caucus. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You think Harris was a good pick? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the day that federal troops pushed Kelly's Industrial Army out of Washington, D.C. and across the Potomac River. The Army was a group of unemployed men who had come to the nation's capital to protest government inaction. The country was in the grip of an economic depression. The nation's agricultural regions in the South and Great Plains were also hit by a drought. Times were hard for American workers and families. The call had gone out across the nation for the unemployed to make their way to the doorstep of Congress. The goal was to petition for public infrastructure projects to put people back to work. Businessman Jacob Coxey had organized a March of the Unemployed from Ohio. Charles T. Kelly and his group came from California. They rode the rails and made it to Des Moines, Iowa, where they encamped. After a while, the local residents decided the unemployed group had outstayed their welcome. The Iowans provided lumber so the industrial army could build flatboats and be on their way. By the time Charles Kelly and his men made it to D.C., Coxey had already been sentenced to 20 days in jail for trespassing on the Capitol lawn. Yet unemployed men from across the country kept coming into the nation's capital. 1,200 men arrived from different points across the country. One of those in Kelly's group was a young author by the name of Jack London. London wrote of his experience, quote, "Across the wild and woolly West, clear from California, General Kelly and his heroes captured trains. But they fell down when they crossed the Missouri and went up against the effete East. The marchers' protests earned no help from Congress." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So clearly, Korea, a big fan of the Harris nomination. And look, I said before, I think it's going to be one of two things. I think she's going to bring the incredible magic and passion and that fire that I think Biden kind of needs, or I think she's going to overpower the campaign and maybe be like a Sarah Palin influence. We'll see. Hopeful that she brings the passion and the fire that he needs. I'll tell you personally, I'm kind of looking forward to the debate between Trump's submissive wife, Mike Pence. I think that will be interesting. But we'll see. We'll see how this works. And look, this is one of those moments where as Korea was saying, we should be opening our arms to people who are saying, hey, I'm tired of the insanity. I'm tired of Trump. I'm tired of this kind of chaos. I've said a million times, I respect honest conservatives. If you hold to your values and your belief system and you understand what they are and you're consistent, and well, if that were the case, you wouldn't be a Trump supporter, which is why you have so many of these never Trumpers, because they understood he wasn't a conservative, he wasn't an evangelical, he's none of those things. He's a narcissist and a racist and all of those things, that the tags that he's been hit with, and the people that have risen in this moment because of him are in that line as well. And I look at this, this story coming out of North Carolina, their 11th congressional district. There's a 25-year-old guy who's running as the Republican. He actually beat the Trump-backed primary guy there. Evidently, this guy has some pictures of him, going to Hitler's holiday retreat, and he posted, pictures with the Fuhrer. Saying that he was, at the Fuhrer's, eagle's nest, where the Fuhrer went, and because it was on his bucket list. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these moments where you've just got some of these really crazy characters that continue to pop up. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about, the influence of other countries on our election, and there's this thing the other day that caught my attention. In Portland during the uprising going on there, and there have been some violence, there have been some things that I'm not okay with, but evidently this viral video went around of the Antifa people burning Bibles, and evidently there was a Bible that was burnt. They think it was something that people were giving away. And they just end up using it as kindling. Well, the Russians got a hold of it and immediately sent it viral, which again is, exactly what the Russians do very well, is they make sure that you see every bit of division. So again, it's just another one of these moments where, the things that are in front of us on Facebook, on social media, got a question. Because I saw the video and I'm like, yeah, that looks like one Bible. I'm not seeing stacks. I am not seeing this as an organized attempt to end Christianity. because that's what they want the evangelicals to believe. They're firing up the evangelical base because you got some idiot out there who went and burned a Bible, which I think is stupid and it's dumb, and I don't condone it. And yet there's going to be one moron to get some attention who will do it. But ultimately, it's his right. It's our responsibility to look at this and go, hey, that's just one idiot. That's not the entire movement of people who are out there fighting against racial injustice and police brutality. It's just that simple. At least in my mind it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. Did you see the video? I'd love to hear what you thought of it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.